The Trans-Mississippian International Exposition was a World's Fair held in Omaha, Nebraska from June 1st to November 1st of 1898. Its goal was to showcase the development of the entire West, stretching from the Mississippi River to the Pacific coast. Starting in the early 1890s, Omaha boosters dreamed of hosting something special to build their city up. With the closing of the frontier in the 1870s, the stagnation of the railroad system in the 1880s, and a nationwide economic recession that hit Omaha particularly hard in the 1890s, the city needed a shot in the arm. The first World Expo was held in London, England in 1851. Philadelphia held the first similar event in the U.S. called the Centennial Exposition in 1876. However, it was the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893 that really moved Omaha's interest forward. There were more than 120 buildings constructed for the Trans-Mississippi Expo in 1898. Construction began in late 1897. By the end of 1899, all the buildings were gone, either completely demolished or moved and reused in a different location. Over 2.6 million people came to Omaha to view the 4,062 exhibits during the 5 months of the exposition. President William McKinley and William Jennings Bryan were among the dignitaries who attended at the invitation of Gurdon Wattles, the event's leader. 100,000 people assembled on the plaza to hear them speak. The Indian Congress took place in conjunction with the exposition. Occurring within a decade of the end of the Indian Wars, the Indian Congress was the largest gathering of American Indian tribes of its kind to that date. Over 500 members of 35 different tribes attended, including the Apache chief Geronimo, who was being held at Fort Sill as a United States prisoner of war. One of the many features of the fair was the electric illumination of the streets. A series of commemorative stamps was issued for the event. The album page on the left is my set of Trans-Mississippi stamps. The pane on the right is from 1998 and celebrates the 100th anniversary of the stamps. They are pictured here in their color printing as originally intended. Because the presses were needed for revenue stamps to finance the Spanish-American War in 1898, the decision was made to print the Trans-Mississippi stamps in single colors instead of bicolor. The frame of each of the stamps was the same. Wheat was shown on the top of the frames. Corn was shown on the side of the frames. Farmers insisted that both crops be shown on the stamps. The stamps were sold for only 4 months, then the remainder were destroyed. The 1-cent Trans-Mississippi Exposition stamp pictures Father Jacques Marquette preaching to a group of Native Americans. The design is based on a William Lamprecht painting owned by Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Marquette was a French Jesuit missionary and the founder of Michigan's first European settlement, Sault Ste. Marie. In 1673, Marquette and Louis Joliet were the first explorers to map the northern portion of the Mississippi River. The 2-cent Trans-Mississippi Exposition stamp, entitled Farming in the West, pictures a team of horses plowing a wheat field. The design is based on a photograph taken in the field of the Amenia and Sharon Land Company, a 27,000-acre bonanza farm in North Dakota. Bonanza farms were very large operations that grew and harvested wheat on a large scale. Up until 2012, the U.S. Post Office had a rule that no living person shall be honored by portrayal on U.S. postage. Unwittingly, the Trans-Mississippi 2-cent issue evaded that ruling and has the glory in the annals of stamp collecting to be the first stamp depicting a living character. Team driver Yvonne Ed Niebakken was cheated of his chance for glory by a gust of wind. As the teams posed for the photographer, a sudden wind caused Niebakken to grab for his straw hat just as the camera clicked, forever obscuring his face in the famous photograph. Only 2 other men in the photograph have been identified. Elihu Barber is directly behind Niebakken, with his dog on the seat beside him, and behind Barber is foreman Sam White, standing in a buggy drawn by 2 horses. Harvesting in the West was originally intended to be on the $2 stamp. Because of the importance of farming to the West, the design was used on the 2-cent stamp, which would see much more use as the standard letter rate in 1898. The design of the 4-cent Trans-Mississippi stamp was taken from an engraving by Captain Seth Eastman, a soldier who used his considerable artistic skills to capture scenes from the Old West. The Bureau of Engraving and Printing's designer and engraver eliminated background figures in Eastman's original painting and focused only on the racing Indian and buffalo. Bison hunting was an important spiritual practice and source of material, especially after the European introduction of the horse in the 16th through 18th centuries enabled new hunting techniques. During 4 early expeditions, John C. Fremont became known as the Pathfinder, exploring the vast territory west of the Mississippi River to the Pacific Ocean. The design for the 5-cent Trans-Mississippi stamp was an original design, inspired by artwork from the era. In June 1856, Fremont became the first presidential candidate of the newly formed Republican Party. Although he had also been asked to be the Democratic presidential candidate, he refused, partly because the party supported slavery. Fearing that his election would cause the southern states to secede and possibly lead to a civil war, the Democrats strongly opposed his nomination. Although he carried 11 states, Buchanan, his Democratic rival, carried 19, and Fremont lost the election. The 8-cent Trans-Mississippi stamp pictures a group of federal troops escorting a wagon train in the West. Based on a Frederick Remington drawing, Troops Guarding Train is one of the most visually appealing of the Trans-Mississippi series. Raised during the Civil War, Remington enjoyed spending his time outdoors as a child, riding horses, boating, fishing, and hunting. When he was in school, he spent much of his time sketching a variety of subjects, though he often focused on soldiers in military uniforms and cowboys. The 10-cent Trans-Mississippi stamp pictures the struggles of early settlers. Often they found themselves stranded in the middle of a prairie with a sick or dying animal harnessed to their wagons. The design was based on a painting by Augustus G. Heaton. The original painting was destroyed by fire in 1930. Another in the series of first day of issue covers for the 1998 Trans-Mississippi Centennial is by one of my favorite cover artists, Fred Collins. This design was taken from a drawing by Frederick Remington entitled The Gold Bug, It pictures an old prospector who, with two pack burros, makes his way through mountain country in search of riches. Here is Remington's The Gold Bug. Here is the happy prospector with his 8-piece box of chicken, yet to be prepared for dinner. Many people consider the $1 Trans-Mississippi stamp to be the most beautiful stamp ever issued. It was chosen number 6 of 100 in the book, 100 Greatest American Stamps. The stamp's design was based on a painting by John McWhorter, The Vanguard. It was copied and used by advertisers. It actually portrayed cattle in Scotland, not the western United States. The post office apologized to the artist, but never actually paid any compensation for the use of the artwork. Here's the cover by Fred Collins of the 1998 issue. The United States Postal Service also issued a pane of 9 stamps of the original bicolor design. This is the Colorado silk cachet for the Centennial Stamp issue. The $2 Trans-Mississippi Exposition commemorative stamp pictures the Eads Bridge spanning the Mississippi River in St. Louis, Missouri. In the 19th century, this engineering marvel formed a natural boundary between East and West. At the time of its construction, it was the longest arch bridge in the world, with an overall length of 6,442 feet. I would like to share why the Trans-Mississippi series is so very important to me personally. This is a picture of me with my namesake, my grandfather Turner. Because he was Harold, or Pop Turner, and my father was Junior, I quickly became known as Hal. My grandfather Turner was born in 1898. The Trans-Mississippi exhibition was held later that year. As I worked to complete my series of stamps, I thought about the significance of having a complete series of stamps from the year he was born. He is pictured here, ready to ship out to France to fight in the trenches in World War I. My grandfather lived for 64 years. 3 years ago, when I had my heart attack, I was 64 years old. For my 65th birthday, my mother and my sister each gifted me a nice sum of money. I didn't spend it all in one place, but my sister gave me the stamp on the left, and my mother gave me the stamp on the right. My family helped me complete the series at a time when I didn't think it would be possible. The Trans-Mississippi series will always have a special place in my heart.